Okay, call meeting order. Okay, approval of the May 13th minutes.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, very good. All right, public comment? Okay, and so reports on items from city staff.
All right, so I'll just talk just real briefly about our new commission member, and then I'm going to let Tyler and Brad go next so I don't accidentally tell you what they're planning on telling you. But Sabrina Voorhees has been appointed our new commission member. She was planning on being here tonight, had a weather-related issue, so canceled at the last moment tonight. So she is on board. She lives kind of over at Friendship Street, has a little boy. Has been a lifelong Iowa City resident, works for City Construction, who is actually the construction company at City Park Pool, but she applied separately, no connection to the company, applied as her, as a resident. So she'll come on board with a lot of knowledge about Parks and Rec things because she actually does quite a few things with her little boy. So, and then I will turn over to Tyler, who's going to go through his, and you'll come back to me for more.
Okay.
I'll stand up here, so hopefully I get picked up on this mic here. So we are back to full staff, permanent staff as of last week. So dating back to a retirement at the end of February and then one resignation and the time between there, we are finally back to full staff. So it's not the best time of year to leading up to that to be without full staff, but we are thankful we've got everyone on. And it took a little bit longer because those staff have been filled from lower positions, and then our most recent ones were both actually seasonals with us for longer term seasonals. So it's really nice to see them in permanent roles, and they already know a lot, so that helps us hit the ground running with that too. So I'm really excited for that. Most of our seasonal staff are on for the summer as well. So we've got a large crew right now, a lot of which do ball field work. And then our other crews, Mo crews, are all kind of filled out as well at this point. Tree planting. So as you saw when you came in, maybe some bags on the trees out here, the young trees. Those are all the new ones we planted here with Rotary. They also helped us plant at Riverfront Crossings, and we planted a bunch on the west side of town as well. So if you go out on Road and take the last couple of rights, that whole neighborhood there has new trees. And we are done planting for the spring season. We'll plant in the fall, and those trees will be on the northeast side of town as well as the South District. More with tree planting. We're currently in the middle of a grant application, so fingers crossed would be another 30,000 for trees, and that would be for the other part of the South District, so west of Sycamore, whereas we're doing the one east of Sycamore with this project. So that neighborhood was hit hard by a storm a couple months ago, and it was already in need of some trees, as a lot of the private trees were in decline in that neighborhood. Kind of same line of things, but with smaller plants. The Hort crew's been doing a really good job downtown and in their other areas, getting all the perennials, annuals, things like that looking nice. It looks super good last weekend for the Arts Festival, and they'll keep it looking nice for the other festivals throughout the year. So busy time downtown, so that looks really nice right now. Let's see. Staying on plants, a lot of damage today from trees. The ones I know of were probably at 25 or so, varying things from a branch on a small tree to larger trees. I think there was one on a house, so there's lots of different ones. A lot of them were private damage, and then in addition to what I am talking about and know of, there were other private trees that are just out there that that we know have damage. So lots of people impacted by that storm this morning, and hopefully no more this evening. City Park shelters, switching gears here, that project, the contractors started with demolition, and they're on track with that. They have the shelters ordered, long lead times on both types of shelters. So that project will finish in the fall, but a lot of the time is they're going to be waiting on shelters, but that gives them time to have everything prepped. So once the shelters do come in, that'll be a quick install process for them. They're also working on updating, renovating the one restroom there, so that one will be, that'll give them time to do that too in the meantime. North Market Square Park project's also starting. They were planning out how the fences were going there to block off the construction zone while it's in progress. That one has to be done this summer, so the playground can be open for school time. So that one's starting as well. And then Napoleon Park softball, that one will be on the next council agenda. So we're getting closer to going out for bids for that one. So we're hoping for that one. Most of it this fall, maybe some finish up in the spring, so it's ready for spring games there. And then here, which you may kind of see on your way out, the project's mostly complete. The punch list items, they have some left. It was a collaboration with the school district on the project, so I know they played at least high school baseball games. They may not have played softball yet because they still have their other complex available, but they were hoping to get softball in here, I think, as well this year.
I think next week.
Next week, okay. And then our other fields and then the common space, all those amenities, the work is done for those spots. They were finishing up with some batting cage work on the far end, and that was kind of their last piece of that project there. I think that's everything. Any questions or anything I may have missed that anyone has questions about out there? Okay.
I'm just kind of curious with the tree planting, is it they're 100% native or if there's some non-natives?
Yeah, good question. There are some non-natives. We're probably, don't hold me to this, but 75% native probably. And it depends on what you include as native, if it's a native-ar or, a cultivar of a native or a street species. And then there's others like Tupelo or black gum, as some people call it, that are not necessarily native, but as the climate changes, they're native to the U.S. and we're planning for 100, 150 years in the future.
Exactly. Okay.
So keeping an eye on natives, but sometimes we use others when it makes sense and to increase our diversity too.
Sure.
Yeah, good
Okay,
question.
thank
Yeah. Any others?
I have two
Yeah.
questions. So, so one for the North Market Square construction area.
Yeah.
So, what is kind of like blocked off and what's not blocked off?
Yes, so the east half of the park will be blocked off, and then just the little areas around where they're doing the drinking fountain. And then I believe they'll come back in with a fence around or some sort of way to block off the basketball court when they're doing the surfacing, but not
Okay.
until they do the surfacing.
So that part's still open, and then like the gazebo area would still be
Yeah,
open.
those are still open, correct. Good question.
My other one, with the storm, with this being like a storm season,
Yep.
could you just give like a little overview of what trees are private person's responsibility and what would you contact the city for?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. We get questions all the time. So generally, if there's a sidewalk, anything between the sidewalk and the house is the homeowner's responsibility. Generally, usually the sidewalk is a foot off of the property line, so that generally counts. There's obviously some spots without sidewalks where it's a little more of a question, but we would utilize what's in the plat for that to tell where everything is. Now, if a private tree falls into the road especially, we will usually at least get it partially cleaned up. Usually the rest of that gets sat into their yard or left in the right of way for them to clean up at that time if it's their tree. If it's something that goes right through the chipper easily and it's quicker to do that way, sometimes that happens, but typically it's the homeowner's responsibility if it's their tree to clean up. But like I say, sometimes we have to do things We had one, for instance, earlier this week that was a private tree, and it came down and was resting on a bunch of others on Ridge Road. If you guys know Ridge Road, it comes up from the river there and off of Dubuque, very narrow. We had to have our contractor actually do that one, and that was at our expense to make sure the road was safe, essentially. But anything in the private yard, what would be the plat of that homeowners, is their responsibility. And then hopefully they're being good neighbors if one falls from one end to the other.
Yeah.
So
So if a tree is in that area, I ask this because I live on Church Street. We have a bunch of gigantic trees.
Yes.
So there's one that's in between the sidewalk and the curb that falls. That's like the city tree.
Yeah.
Right. So if it falls but if it's a city tree that falls into a person's yard,
we'll still clean up the whole
Okay,
thing.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good question. Yeah, yeah.
It's a bit of an art form when it's out right after a storm.
Yes.
for sure. Yeah.
So in today, for instance, complications we have with storms. So we didn't have power at our shop. So our staff didn't have internet or desk phone availability to get things. I was technically off today, but I was watching my phone. I got a call from police, instructed them on who to get on the email chain, and then they could get that email from their cell phones, but then service requests come in as well. So I was helping funnel those things to them. So it can get pretty complicated when power goes out and other things, but I think we got all the roads, at least until this last one, open today, kind of throughout the day. So, but there is an art form to getting to everything.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Heather.
Thanks.
Okay, Brian.
Hello, everybody. All right, well, I am going to start with the topic that is basically the top of our Facebook page and a lot of our press releases that you've seen recently. So our pools. Julie's going to talk a bit more about City Park Pool. As I'm sure you've all seen on Friday, I think it was Thursday or Friday last week, we announced that we will not be opening this season, unfortunately. We put that press release out. Julie made a nice video for that, also kind of describing the process and the progress we've made thus far. But wanted to talk about the other pools that we have. So it's been kind of a red light, green light with our swimming pools as of late, with some maintenance issues that we've had. I'll start at Robert A. Lee. A couple weeks ago, we had a valve that sprung a leak from our filtration system, and so we lost pressure, so we weren't able to recirculate the water. Unfortunately, that valve is not something that we're able to go and pick off the shelf of somewhere. We had to have it, I think, next day aired to us.
From California or Florida?
Yeah,
one of the two.
California, I think is what it was.
Yeah.
So it's got its own little private flight out to see us. So it took a few days to get that part, get it installed, get the pumps started back up, get the water circulating again. And so that was a little bit of a longer closure for us. But maintenance staff tried to turn that around as quickly as they could. And then I believe it was last week we had we realized on Sunday night that there was a chlorinator that was stuck in the on position. And so our water was really hot. It had and when I say hot, high chemical levels, high chlorine levels. So we were probably at about 12 parts per million. So if you were to get into that, you'd definitely notice that on your skin. You'd probably bleach out your swim trunks. We definitely don't want anybody swimming in that. That exceeds what we would consider safe water. So we had to close. Fortunately, that was a easier fix for us. We were able to have maintenance come in, our pool representative come in the next day and get that fixed. And so we were able to kind of cycle that out in about 24 hours. So that was definitely a quicker fix for us. Here, we realized about a week and a half ago that there was one of our two domestic water heaters that services the locker rooms had sprung a leak, and so the water was in the heating elements, and so basically the unit's not going to work for us anymore, and so we had to get that replaced. We have another one that's an older unit, and so we were going to be able to limp along with that. So we were planning on closing tomorrow, the pool here, to get that one replaced. Well, a couple days ago, we learned that we're actually going to be able to replace both of them at the same time. So rather than closing tomorrow and then closing again in a week or 2 weeks, we just decided to push back our closure date and close once probably here in a couple of weeks to get both of those water heaters fixed. And so that allows us to be able to have the hot showers, which by pool code we have to be able to keep the pool open. So it's kind of been a stop and go game a little bit with us with the pool. Also with City Park Pool, without announcing of the closure for the summer, we are going to be extending the hours at Robert A. Lee Swimming Pool this summer. So basically starting this Saturday, and that will go until school starts again. So those hours are going to be Monday through Thursday, 6:15 a.m. to 4:45 p.m. Then we basically have a 15-minute buffer there for our swim lessons that start at 5 o'clock. Friday, we don't have swim lessons, so we'll be open 6:15 a.m. to 8 p.m. Saturday, 6:15 a.m. to 7 p.m. And then Sunday is one of our swim lesson days. It's kind of like right smack dab in the middle of the day. And so we'll still maintain our 5 to 8 p.m. swim that we normally have there on Sundays. And we'll be adding in some different events as we go throughout the summer here at Mercer, over at Robert A. Lee, and maybe some outdoor activities too. We're still going to have a fun summer no matter what. We always do. We had a great summer last year without City Park Pool. We're going to have a great summer again this year. We look forward to having City Park Pool next year, but we're definitely going to have a lot of different activities for people to be able to do. So, which speaking of some of our regular series, we have our Play Days and Party in the Park series starting next Thursday. It was going to be starting this Thursday. It was scheduled to be at Brooklyn Park. If you've seen that park recently, it's under construction. It's not in a...
Not the park, the road in front.
The road in front,
The
yes.
road in, the park was last year.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, the road in front of the park.
Yeah, so parking and just access to the park is very challenging right now. So we decided to postpone the start of our Play Days and Party in the Park series, and that will start next week, next Thursday at James Allen McPherson Park. So looking forward to that. We always have a great turnout there. We also have a hydrant party that's going to be on June 18th at the Pheasant Ridge, one of our first of 3. And then we also have some splash pad parties this summer too. We have our first one June 25th at Fair Meadows Park. Summer camp starts next week, so our staff has been doing all their training here this week, and summer camp, our first of 8 weeks, starts next week. And then we've been partnering with some different groups too. We had staff, our Arts and STEAM staff went out to the Arts Fest this last weekend, and they had a booth that was set up for people to participate in some different activities. And then we'll be joining up with a block party on June 25th, doing our pedal cars and Strider bikes, which is always popular too. Let's see. And then I wanted to note that Bill Lane, who is our program supervisor in communications special events, and he oversees the farmers market, achieved his certified Parks and Recreation professional certification a couple weeks ago, which is something that we strive for in our field. It's definitely a great thing for him to have, and acknowledges his background and his experience that he's had in Parks and Recreation and all the different contributions that he's able to make. Any questions?
Okay. How do you fund those unforeseen issues with the pool spaces? Is it operating budget? Do you have an emergency fund?
That's a great question. It kind of comes from a variety of different sources. So we try to fund most of those out of operating. We do have a fund set up for our recreation centers each year that sometimes we're able to dip into. That's a capital improvement fund that we're able to dip into to fund some of those other projects that come up. But yeah, it's a challenge for sure. And sometimes these years, especially when we've had a lot of different things like this past year, where our expenses have definitely been higher than we would like, for sure.
And we are at the tail end of our budget year. Our year ends June 30th. So that's part of delaying a little bit on the water heater here, is that by delaying, we will get them out of the next fiscal year and be able to do 2 instead of doing 1 now and 1 later. So there's a lot of intricacies to this budget, and it really flows with all of our facility needs. So for instance, today the roof is leaking at City Hall. That's part of our facilities budget. So sometimes City Hall things have to come first. Sometimes it's the rec centers. The money is designated for each of these facilities, but most of it is general fund money, meaning that our highest priority sometimes needs to take something we had planned for something else. It is not a shell game. That's not the right way to say it. It's not a shell game. Is that what I meant? Not minutes. It is a prioritization game, though. It's constantly things are breaking. We have to reprioritize. We are catching up, and I feel like we are getting to a point, especially with our government buildings and facility staff, that we are getting ahead. We're getting more on the maintenance side of things, but we had a 20-year backlog that we're trying to catch up with. So we're getting there.
And sometimes it's prioritization about like, what do we need in the immediate term to stay open, you know, versus something that we can maybe kick the can down the road a little bit too.
Gotcha, thanks.
Do you have a question?
Could you remind me how much a swim pass is for the day?
For a daily admission is $5.
Okay, and there's something called $2. No, at some point?
Yes,
Okay.
yep, so that is on Fridays and Sundays.
Also all day?
No, just in the evening hours.
Okay, from 5 to 8?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Great. And then with the chlorinator, I guess not being turned off, is that something that has happened before? Is there?
It was a mechanical failure, not a staffing failure, yeah.
So when you so with the valve having to order that from California, like is that an age of pool thing where you can't get that valve locally?
I believe so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And we did order 2.
Now, my next question.
We ordered 2, so we now have one on the shelf. And we are taking the one that was broken, my understanding, and it's going to be rebuilt. So we will have 2 backups from now on. But that's what we're having to do a lot with our older equipment now is rebuild or have backups because it is becoming difficult to find those things. And just when we get everything stocked to where we think it's what we need, it's something else that breaks every time. So, yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah.
I'm wondering how we're going to publicize the extended hours
Sure.
because people don't know about it.
Yep, for sure. So we'll do it through all the different channels that we have. So we'll be doing social media, we'll be doing a press release, we'll be doing Nextdoor, an email out to our pass holders. And can you think of any other? Rain Outline, we'll probably post something on there as well. Kind of all the different channels that we use to post closures and any other news about the pool. We'll be utilizing those channels to get the word out. Then we'll remind people on Facebook too as the summer progresses. Like, hey, just a reminder, we have these different hours too that are not usual, and our website too will be updated as well with the hours.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
As well as signs on the door. or-
Yes, and we'll have signs. Thank you. Yes.
They're not black and brown with black ink. I can never read them.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Brad.
So I now want to run through several of our larger projects and answer your questions. The first one, I'm going to do City Park Pool, just in case the weather gets us done earlier than planned. As we announced Friday, we're officially saying we won't open until next spring. We are all disappointed that that's the case. And if you follow social media, there's been a lot of comments. I'm going to go through some of those and answer what I can tonight so you have the information or answer any other questions you might have about it. If you've heard a rumor out there and you want to say, is this true? Please ask, because I'd like to get those things kind of out in the open. But I also have to, though, be careful what I say because we're under contract with a construction company. They have liquidated damages, so in their contract, for every day they're late, there is an amount due for each day. However, there's all kinds of negotiations that happen as to how much of that actually is paid out at the end of the project. Things like weather delays, delays caused by the city or caused by the architect. It's at the very best, it's a negotiation at the end. At the very worst, it can be litigation. So please know that I have to be somewhat careful about specifics about what I tell. And that's been the gist of a lot of the comments on Facebook, tell us more what's going on. I'm not going to give all the details of every little thing. It really breaks down to a whole cascade of things that have happened over the whole time of this project. I don't think there's any one bad player in the whole group to say it was their fault that it's not done. I will say that up front. I think it's just been several smaller things. It started with some poor soils underneath the pool. We knew that could be an issue. There was adequate geotechnical reports done where they go out and test the soils and provide that information. However, realize that means they go out and they take a sample here and a sample here and a sample here. Well, if the bad soil ends up being here, it didn't show up on the report and they still have to fix it. And that means they dig it out, they bring new soil in. So way back, over a year ago, that was some of the early delays from the project. There have been some additional delays caused by that due to different changing elevations of where the deck ended up and where the bathhouse ended up. That's led to the piping as shown on the designs is not quite accurate because the levels, the elevations of the pool deck has changed now. Honestly, not that atypical in a project of this size, but complicated just because it's a swimming pool and the amount of piping and different things that have to happen around that. There have been numerous delays in shipments of different materials, everything from roofing to now it's some of the trim work that goes on the outside envelope or keeps the building from getting wet inside. So that's been part of it. And there's been some weather delays and you could look back and say, well, I think we had a pretty good winter, and you're right, and we had a pretty good spring. But when we're on a very critical path of a number of things having to happen, one or two delays can set people back quite a ways because the general contractor has multiple subcontractors working underneath them. Each one of those subcontractors is not only working on our project, but they're working on about, many, many other projects around the area. So if we get a day like today where tomorrow that the pool area is going to be mud soup, that contractor is going to say, okay, I can't work on that site very easily today. I'm going to go to project B over here and work on that. And that's going to take me 3 days before I can come back to your project, even if the site. So there's a lot of that. And that is very typical of large projects. It's just kind of all added up together in this one. So some of the questions that have been asked on Facebook, and I'll just read some of them. Are the people whose taxes paid for the project getting their money back? Well, no. We haven't spent any extra money. We are, on this size of a project, we are under, a change order is during a project if we see something coming up, they forgot to plumb for a certain piece of equipment that we asked for. We say, add this piece of pipe, and they say that's a change order and you have to pay $100 or $1,000 extra. Our total of change orders to this point is a little under 5% of the project cost. And that's pretty typical on it. In fact, it's kind of low on a project of this size. So there haven't been many change orders. There haven't been many additional costs yet. People are really worried about that. The other interesting part is we actually don't lose money not being open because the revenues for this pool never pay for the operations. So you also don't, the taxpayers aren't losing money with it not being open this year. You're losing a heck of a lot of fun and a heck of a lot of experience that we were hoping to provide, but we're not actually losing money. Also because we didn't have all our staff hired yet, and we have pulled back on the number of lifeguards that hired, and so there isn't this big additional operating expense. You don't buy the chemicals until the pool's ready to operate. Does that make sense? So people want more specifics on what are the delays. Kind of what I explained is pretty much what I can explain. There is no one big smoking gun at this point of what has caused the delays. Why are there delays? As I just explained, this is more how can I ask this as a question? Did you really not know that it wouldn't take till 2027? Yeah, we really didn't. We really had planned, and it would be typical that they should have been able to get done and be open as planned. It might have been close. When I opened the Coralville facility back in 2005, I think think it was 2004, 2005. And when we got the delivery of the railings for the slides the night at midnight, the night before we opened. So it's always kind of last minute, but it could have been done. We really thought we would be done. It's not. Will there be more delays? I sure hope not, but I don't know. And if we got done and they said we could open the last 2 weekends in August, I would push that we would still try to open for at least a weekend or two if we could. But we're not promising that at this point. We don't think that's reality, but it's still on the table if that were to happen. Are there per day penalties? Yes, that's in the contract. For every day they're late, there is a dollar amount that is charged. However, as I said, that's always offset. If one of these change orders is because of something the city asked to be changed, they can say, well, that cost us an extra 10 days. And on that change order, we actually approve an additional 10 days to the contract. So at the end of all this, we tally all this up and say it took 100 extra days. Along the way, we approved 50 of those extra days because of things that we were talking about, or we agreed with you that this would take longer. So there's some give and take through this whole thing that will kind of come out in the wash at the end. Will Iowa City taxpayers get a rebate or discount of usage fees once it opens a year later? I don't think so, but that's something we'll discuss as we go forward. We have discussed, that's part of why we're opening Robert A. Lee some more hours this summer. That's why we're adding in events this summer. We still want to make it a great summer for everyone. And when we get ready to open next year, we're going to have a heck of a celebration for one thing. But we will try to make ways to make it really fun and make it as inviting as possible to people. Throughout the comments we've received, still just a lot of comments about the design. People like it, they don't like it, they want more lap lanes, they want slides, it's not big enough, it's too big, I just want to remind everyone that we went through a very, very extensive public input process on this. Staff did not make these decisions. These were decisions that were led by the public input that we received. And that is why we're building the pool that we're building, that is what the residents wanted when we did this extensive, everything from surveys to public input meetings and all of that. So there is no changing the design on that level or scale at this point, even with the delays. We can't just say, oh, we're going to add a slide or a lazy river or something at this point. What we're going to get is what we're going to get. I am super proud being in the middle of that pool, looking around and seeing all the mature trees still in place. If you remember, we said we would take out 7 trees. They were smaller trees. Might be 8 now. I think we ended up with 1 extra. Maybe, I can't remember. So we've maintained the fence, the general fence line. We've maintained the trees around it. I think you're going to find when you get there, you still have that city park atmosphere for swimming. We really are trying our best to give the public what you asked for in this facility and to do it well so that it lasts for the next 50 years. I think those are the questions that I had been received and kind of the information. What other questions do you have about City Park Pool?
So one of my questions, so for answers like this, do you, maybe on the City Park Pool page, maybe you could do just abbreviated answers like that?
I have to be very careful of how I do that. So we generally will not do that because of the future possibility for negotiations. So people are welcome to email me, and we've encouraged people to email me or call me. Okay. And I will give out the information in those ways. We can talk with our legal staff and see if they're okay with us doing more of a update that way. But
and I don't know how to. I don't know if this is worth your time to address or not, but I've had a number of people, to your point about the public input with the design of the pool.
Yeah.
I've had a number of people come up and say, I voted for a design that was 1 pool.
Yeah.
And now it's 3. And why is that? And why did I bother doing this survey if it was just going to be 3 pools? So if there's a way that could be addressed,
sure.
Or I'm not sure, but or explanation as to why that design changed. I understand why it changed, but
yeah, and I think just for everyone's reference, the reason it's 3 pools is to give us more flexibility in the operations. we heard, yes, we want one pool, but we also heard very loud and clear, we want to have separate activities going at the same time. We want to have some of the uses separated. It gives us the ability to heat the pools separately from each other, so we can have the leisure pool warmer than the lap pool. We can have, if we have a brown accident in the middle of the day in one of those pools, the other two can stay open later. It would give us the option of running just the lap pool or just a diving pool for a while. You know, we could run one independently of the other two. So I think what it does is gives us a heck of a lot more flexibility to how we operate. I think one of the big misconceptions with that is the amount of space in the lap pool. And if you see the video, I'm standing in the middle of it. It is 50 meters, 6 lanes. It only gets to be 4.5 feet deep at the end. So Tyler stood down, and Tyler's not a professed swimmer. And he said, I'll stand down here later because it's not deep water down there. So 2 lanes during open swim hours, but 4 lanes open for water walking, open for a general fun, kids playing around. We could do cross, lanes for water for the shorter laps. We could do a lot of different things once we get open. But I think that's one thing that residents haven't quite understood. That it's a lap pool. Yes, it will have 6 lanes open during our traditional lap swim times. But during open swim times, it's also part of the open swim equation as well. So we think there's going to be plenty of space for everyone. But yeah.
During the construction, did we figure out where the 50,000 gallons of water per day went, or why it didn't dig out like the whole bottom of the pool?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. The soil's drained. There's a lot of sandy soil underneath it. So a lot of it drained through into the water table. We know that's where a lot of it went. They did not do like an archaeological dismantling of the pool. So they didn't, tear it off one part at one part. We did not find any large voids like we thought we might find, but they found a lot of cracked pipes, a lot of pipes that weren't connected where they should have been. So it probably was a number of small leaks, which would be typical with a pool that age. It wasn't one ringer that we could say it was this. It was leaking small amounts in lots of other places. And the cement was literally crumbling. So some of it was likely flowing through the cement as well. So, yeah, good question. Yeah.
Addressing that same issue, I recall trying very hard to find out what kind of daily water loss is normal for a pool, and I couldn't find that.
I want to say it's
quite a bit.
If Josh was here, he would know. It's 1/2 inch to 1 inch a day.
But how much in terms of gallons?
Yeah, and we did have that figured out at one time. I can get it for you.
That I would love to know.
Yeah, and we also know what we did with the leak test was what you do is you fill the pool to the top. You stop all circulation and let it sit, and you monitor the air conditions to know whether it's humid or not, or if we get rain, and you measure. And I think we lost like 5 inches instead of the 1/2 inch to 1 inch that would be typical from both evaporation and splash out in a pool. So yeah.
Yeah. This is also, it's kind of, that asking that question is sort of a kind of a moot point, but it just was something that I really tried to find, and I couldn't. And another thing that, another point I'd like to make is that I understand that in the surveys and the various kinds of feedback that you collected, that these are the kinds of or that this design or something similar is what won out. I'm always curious about what I feel as though people who use the city park pool a lot voted for one big pool, and people that don't use city park pool were attracted by the idea of these, select variety of pools and water toys and things. And there's nothing you can do about that exactly, but if you are, it might be a thing to just sort of, keep in mind in promoting the pool. that if you were a person who went, daily, year after year to that pool, it's really like a tragedy that it's changed in such a dramatic way. And I think that needs to be, that's a reasonable feeling for them, to have. I don't know if that's I don't know if there's anything one can
Sure.
do about that.
Well, I would say a couple of things. Is that A, give the new pool a chance first before we decide. Really, come try it. I think that I think people will like it more than you think. We were tasked as a staff to find out why people weren't using the other pool. That's part of it. So that's why our outreach efforts were so broad, to try to get all sorts of people to get their input on what the new pool would look like. Yes, we know we had a very loyal group using the pool, but at a level that really never filled that pool. For as big as it was, we wanted to find out why people weren't using it as much as why people were. So there had to be a balancing act there of here's what's really important, here's what we liked about the old City Park pool and the atmosphere and the way it functioned. Here's what could be changed to make it more inviting to other people as well. Like kind of that balancing act between the two of those. And that's going to be difficult in any project of this size. You also have to remember, we also have the environmental concerns. I forget the percentage right now. We'd have to go back and fact check what I'm going to say, but we're like at 50% the amount of water by doing the 3 pools rather than the large pools. Safety concerns. We have the deep water in one area rather than having such a large deep area that necessarily wasn't always as well populated or as used during open swim times. So yes, it's changed. Yes, I think we were careful to try as best we could to maintain the herd, keep it lower key, keep it quiet, keep the lap lanes, keep it feeling like we're at City Park. We didn't add extra parking so that size-wise, the experience should feel similar. At the same time, we have a goal that everybody learns how to swim and enjoys the pool. So we had to look at what else could be done to make it a better or a different facility on those things. I think people are really going to love the ramp going down into the lap pool. I love that. I love the stairs going into the diving well. There's a bench around the leisure pool that is going to be great for us adults to sit on, and the little ones are playing in the middle. So I really hope people will hold back a little bit on judgment until they actually come out and try it and see it.
Well, I'm sure.
So I challenge you on that one too.
Okay.
So
Because I'm sure people will have different experiences once they've actually used the pool, and we'll hope that most of those will be positive ones. But now I just have a real nuts and bolts question. Just what does bad soil mean, and what caused the changing elevations? Was it bringing any other soil?
Okay, so good questions, and we're going to talk Terrell Mill next, which has some of the same issues. So when you build something on soils, it has to meet certain compaction levels.
Yeah.
So that means they go out and they do tests to see if it will be load bearing. And I don't know if either Ryan or Michael want to help me out on this explanation. You both are kind of in this world too. But they test, you don't want to put something of weight on soils that isn't going to hold it up. So they have to do a certain number of compaction things. Like you'll see them out with big rollers, oftentimes rolling things out. You'll see them drying out soil because it has to do with how much moisture content is in it when they put the thing on top of it. It has to do with what's in that soil, whether it's a sandy loam or if it's all sand and the City Park site, what we found was there was a lot more sand in parts of that site than they were expecting. So when that happens, it's like being on the seashore, you can't build something solid on top of the sand. So they have to dig out the unsuitable soil and they bring in new soil from somewhere else. And it's interesting because sometimes it balances out from projects. I'll just mention, since we're here, City Park shelters are getting fill in a number of areas because we're replacing the shelters. The soil for that is coming from what we've dug up here at Mercer. So oftentimes we're able to pull soil from one project to the next to the next. It's by the truckloads. Terrell Mill, they brought in 300 truckloads of dirt in different ways. They roll over it. I got to go out and witness one of the rolling tests on Terrell Mill about 2 weeks ago. They literally take the dump truck, a loaded dump truck, they weigh it to a certain weight. They roll it over the top and they video it and look at it, and they whoever the smart people are look at and see how much it vibrates underneath it and have some measurements that say it's stable or it's not stable. How do we plan for that in construction? So before designs are even made on a project, we hire firms to come out and do what's called geotechnical testing. And they go out and do soil cores on a certain grid and a certain spots. If they know that there's going to be a footing in an area, they would generally do a geotechnical test there. They get that information, goes to everyone bidding on the project as well as the project designers. So everyone should have that information. It's just not a perfect science. And that's sometimes we find things are different than where the actual, you can't test the soil in every single area. Well, you could, but that's usually not the scope of what we do. Usually doing it, the spot checks is enough for that.
And is that what caused the changing elevations?
Some of it, yeah. So some of the fill came in, and also then similar to Terrell Mill, what we've decided there, which we'll get to next, is the plans for that had called for us to dig out all of what they thought was unsuitable soil. What they found is that actually they could compact what was there and make it suitable, but that lowers it an inch or so. So kind of the same thing on City Park Pool. They were off by about an inch or two. That meant that then we made changes to the bathhouse elevation. There had been some plumbing work inside. This is all taking place about a year ago. Some delays then because the plumber got called off so they could readjust the bottom layer. Those are the kind of delays that happen in any project, but that's kind of the cascade of what started some of this here. So, yeah. Caleb?
Yeah, understanding, just think that
Oh, no.
it sounds like there's some people that question the decisions that were made, or that they didn't really get the explanation that maybe they wanted. And there's probably some people that will disagree with the decision made. But I was, before this discussion started, planning on commending the amount of information gathering sessions that you did, the variety. I think that the platforms were there for people to share their opinions. And you made intentional efforts to reach out to different groups of people, different representative groups of people in town. So I think that you did a very great job with that. Maybe it sounds like the explanation of it either could have been more thorough, or people just did not follow on that part of it when you explained everything. But I thought that it was really impressive, the efforts that were made to gather information from everybody.
Thank you. And I think you have to remember we're also a transient community in some ways. So some of the people that are coming with their kids now weren't here when we did this process 2 years ago too. So I think that that's some of it as well. They made it realized.
Rachel?
Yeah, I'd like to second what Caleb said as well. I thought the efforts were pretty remarkable, actually. But yeah, I was thinking, I mean, it's understandable that people had frustrations and about the delay of the City Park Pool, and a way to ease those frustrations is information. Also, attach what you were saying. And you just gave a wonderful, thorough explanation of many, and it would be, I think it would be good of us to get that out, that, we have it here.
Yeah, we have it on camera
Just
now.
that section, I mean, I was about to say I'd be willing to transcribe it, but I don't know why I would think I don't have that time. Yeah, and also Instagram, if we could consider that as another way of releasing information, I think that would appeal to a lot of people who are maybe more vocal about their complaints. Anyway, I think we should consider somehow getting that snippet of what you said out, because when my friends ask, I try so hard, but I can't do it like you just did.
Yeah, very good.
All right, let me update you on a couple other projects too. That's not the only thing we have going on, and I thought this would be such a quick meeting. Yeah. Sorry about that. Okay, so Terrell Mill, is like a month ago we were stopped. There was no construction happening there because of the water table and wet soils. I have a report that up until today, they were making progress and they had figured a way around. As I mentioned, they determined with the help of some soil technicians and engineers that they indeed don't have to core it all the way down. The soils were stable enough to build. It's difficult because a lot of the engineering standards are based on roads and bridges, and a skate park is not going to get the loads of a car and that kind of thing on top of it. So it's a little bit different how much stability has to be underneath to build. We are confident going that we're going to be able to do it now. I still don't have an end date for that either. I don't know that it'll be done this fall, but they are making a fair amount of progress right now. The water table below has lowered as well, so it does seem to be kind of a spring phenomenon that we ran into. So we're a little more hopeful on that project of what's going on with that. Any questions on Terrell Mill skate park? Okay. We took bids yesterday on replacing the Robert A. Lee roof. Bids came in pretty favorable. However, we have, as we mentioned earlier, we have a number of other building issues happening at the same time. So we had bid the project in two parts with a base bid, which is the area over the swimming pool, and an alternate for the area over the gym. We are only going to do the area over the pool at this time. We need the funding that could potentially go for that gym roof to go towards a couple other higher priorities like the water heaters here and some things like that. So we will be getting that done in the coming months, assuming everything goes forward with that contract. Splash pads have been generally good except for the downtown fountain. If you've been downtown yet this summer, we have not yet had the downtown fountain operating. We had a control board go bad in it. We had it up and running actually about a week before it was supposed to open, and then we had a control board fail. They told us the company that we get it from had to ship it from overseas, and we've been waiting and waiting for a ship date to get it and hadn't gotten it. Just today, we may have found a workaround, so cross your fingers. We still may get it open, soon. But that's what's going on there. The other splash pads have been open with some minor, same thing, minor valve issues. We had a crushed line at Fair Meadows. We had someone run over the electrical service at Weatherby. There's been some ongoing smaller things, but in general, they're all up and running. A new project that we're working on, by new, we've actually been working on it for almost 10 years, but I'm going to get to tell you about it. We've been working with the 100 Grannies organization. They want to put a new kind of a arbor / solar thing in Chauncey Swan Park. So if you've been to the movies at Chauncey Swan Park, Film Scene puts their equipment right in the center at the top. Film Scene has always wanted to have more weather protection, so it'll be like a park shelter that goes over that area with solar panels on top. If it all works as we're intending right now, that would be enough for people to charge their cell phones. It won't be solar panels connected to any kind of grid or anything. It's being funded completely by the 100 Grannies organization. Probably going to be built in the next school year by the industrial arts class at City High School. And then, so it's a pretty cool project all around. They'll be doing a little more, 100 Grannies will be doing a little more fundraising, but they have a substantial amount of it already. So it's exciting to have kind of that whole partnership come together for that. We have that going on. And then bad news or poor news or less than optimal news. Let's go with that one. Thornberry Dog Park. We have a pond at Thornberry Dog Park. It has not had water in it for the last 2 years probably. We've had issues. It was not a natural pond. It was a pond that was constructed at some point. The liner's leaking in some way. We've been trying to figure out solutions for it. We thought we had a solution where we were going to be able to pump some water from the river and fill. We learned today that that's not going to work. That failed. That idea failed. So we're not sure that we're going to get water in that pond this summer, and we will be letting the dog park pass holders know that soon, but it's been an ongoing issue out there. The price tag for having the pond relined is pretty high, and we haven't to date been able to find a contractor that's even really willing to do it. So I don't have a simple solution for that one, other than I don't know how many hours of staff time we've put into trying to figure out what to do on it. So just for dog lovers, let them know that. And then finally, we've been approached by a group that would like us to consider, and this is something that will come back to you as a commission probably in August or September. They'd like us to consider a semi-permanent beer garden in some of our parks, or at least one of our parks. And this is a group of individuals that have coming to us with a concept idea, kind of like there's some up in Milwaukee, right? Milwaukee has some, and Des Moines has one. It's a semi-permanent. You would go to the park and you could have beer. They might have entertainment along with it, but it's an outdoor venue type of thing. I don't have a lot more details about it other than to put it in your brains, think about what your opinions might be on it. Not tonight. Not tonight. If you happen to be in another city and you see one and you say, wow, that's cool, or I see a lot of problems with that, kind of note it, because it will likely come back to you as a commission, like I said, in August or September, to present to you, like, here's what we found as a staff, here's the ideas, here's what these people are asking us. What do you think about it? Because it would be a change in use of our parks. We currently allow alcohol in park shelters when you have a park shelter rental. We allow the Riverside Theater to sell alcohol through the Riverside stage, festival stage, during their performances. And we've allowed it when, like, Think Iowa City has had some special events in the parks. Film Scene is allowed to sell alcohol during Chauncey Swan. But they're all there's very limits around each one of those. Summer of the Arts does it at Riverfront Crossings during concerts. This is going to be a proposal of more of like from May through September or October on a regular basis. They'd like to host something in one of our parks. So you'll get a chance to weigh in on that and say, yeah, it's a really cool idea. Or, we don't know. We honestly don't know. So do a little thinking on that one. I think that's my long list.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, it was wonderful information. Thank you. All right, so we can do the commission time or suggestions for future agenda items. So Caleb, do you have anything you want to add?
Nope, not at all.
Okay, I thought you were going to come up with something. Okay, Brian.
Not at this time, no.
Okay, Mary Helen.
Well, I'm just going to say that I'm hoping we can do a lot of publicity for the extended hours, at RAL, because I think that's going to be needed for people to know that it's available, because not everybody checks the hours on the website. So that's all.
Okay, Rachel.
Let's see. A Midsummer's Night Dream opens from Riverside this weekend, so I hope you all go. It's free. Though we do need donations as well. Anyway, and there was one other thing. Oh yeah, I just want to reiterate, getting information, the details would be great somehow. And so, you know what I was talking about before.
Yeah.
So, anyway, could I maybe follow up with you about that by email this week, maybe?
You can actually. It'd probably be Gabe that will.
Awesome.
And our communication staff gets involved with that. That's why the video that was produced, I should have mentioned earlier, I mean, it was a certain length because that's what people will look at on social media. So I think it'll be a conversation with our communication staff too of how they could use that. So, yeah.
Where's the best place to go for info on Midsummer Night's Dream?
Well, me or the website, Riverside website, yeah.
Okay, I'll talk to you afterwards.
Yeah.
Jeff.
I had a question on CPP. You said the change orders were about 10%
No, 5%, less than
of
5%.
the total cost.
Correct. Of the,
500,000 roughly, something like that?
I'm not gonna quote the dollar.
Okay,
no.
but I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, but less than 5% of the contract amount with the general contractor at this point, yes.
Okay, Michael.
But you're not.
two things. One, thank you again to Brad and the parks and the recreation staff for letting us take over Mercer and Robert A. Lee for voting last week. It was busier than expected, so we like having big open spaces that they could provide. And two, I know you mentioned earlier kind of planning additional stuff because of City Park Pool or Carroll Mill. Some of my North Side friends are just feeling a little bit bummed because North Market Square is going to be closed, City Park's closed. There's no party in the parks over in that area. So if there's anything that gets planned, if there could be consideration for like that North Side neighborhood that kind of, and then the fountain, whenever the fountain, hopefully the fountain will be fixed. But if they can't, they're just kind of feeling a little bit like everything around them is getting closed for the summer. So something could be proposed over there.
I heard from your neighborhood association this morning too, so,
Oh, okay.
yeah, so.
I'm sorry.
I know that's out there, and so our Bill from our Bill Lane is actually working on getting some more information out about what's going on and working on that, so.
All right, well, let's adjourn. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Meeting adjourned.